Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
This time we're going to be looking at
The life and times.
the life and times of David Bohm.
Hmm.
And as always, we're not just looking at, his scientific achievements, but also
Person.
the person,
Yeah.
the whole person,
And we're going to be using a biography by F. David Pete called Infinite Potential,
which is
which is a fantastic.
it's really good.
It's really good, yeah.
I enjoyed reading this one.
Yeah.
And what really struck me, I guess, is that,
Uh-huh.
for a physicist,
Yeah.
Bohm was really a man of contradictions.
Yeah.
He was really interested in philosophy and spirituality.
Yeah. Very mystical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really comes through in the biography.
Yeah.
So should we start at the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
So Bohm was born in 1917 in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Coal mining town.
Coal mining town.
Yeah.
Which, not exactly where you'd expect a future scientific revolutionary.
Yeah, not really. Yeah, to come from. Right. Not really.
I don't know. I feel like we see that a lot with these,
Well, maybe it's that drive to kind of transcend.
yeah,
Your surroundings.
your environment
Yeah.
that kind of pushes you
Yeah, exactly.
to find something more.
Yeah. And his family wasn't exactly, encouraging of his scientific interests.
Right. His dad was very much a practical man.
Yeah, he was a furniture salesman.
Yeah.
And, really valued kind of the concrete world and didn't really understand
Right.
David's fascination with, physics.
And abstract
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his mother also has some mental health issues,
Yeah. Pete mentions that it was a very
which made the home like
chaotic.
pretty chaotic.
Yeah. So again, that makes me wonder,
Yeah.
how does someone come from such a tumultuous
Yeah.
upbringing and then go on to, explore these really profound questions
Yeah.
about the universe?
Yeah. And it almost seems like he was
Yeah.
seeking refuge in these ideas.
Right.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Pete describes these really vivid dreams that Bohm had as a child.
Oh, yeah. But the light
Right, yeah.
and the energy.
Yeah, and this sense of order that was completely absent from his
Very different from.
everyday life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost like a mystical
It is.
experience, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Almost premonitions, in
Yeah.
a way, of his
oh, interesting.
later work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think those dreams were an early indication of his yearning for
I do.
something
I think so.
more than
Yeah.
just the concrete reality around him?
He was searching for something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's that great story about the dripless pitcher
Oh, yeah, that's right.
as a teenager
Yeah.
trying to solve
That's so great.
one of life's little annoyances
Yeah.
with science.
That's amazing.
I love that story.
It's such a great detail.
Trying to impress his dad, too.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
The practicality of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, look, I can use this science for something good.
To make a dripless pitcher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
But it's also really interesting because you see that same desire for order and efficiency
Oh, yeah, totally.
that later becomes, central to his scientific work.
Yeah, it's like that picture is like a little microcosm
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
of his like broader quest
Yeah.
to find,
Yeah.
the underlying patterns and principles of the universe.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so despite, this kind of chaotic upbringing,
Excelled.
he was obviously really talented
Yeah.
in math and science.
Yeah.
And Pete even mentions that he taught a geometry class when he was still in high school.
What?
Yeah.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
That's amazing.
Like, how is that even possible?
I know.
He must have just been so far ahead
Yeah, clearly.
of his peers.
Yeah.
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 And so this obviously led him to, first Pennsylvania State College and then to Caltech, the big leagues.
Yeah, exactly. Among some of the, leading physicists of the time.
Yeah, but I think the real turning point
Yeah.
was when he joined
Yeah.
Oppenheimer's group at Berkeley.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about being thrown in the deep end,
I know.
right?
Yeah, and Oppenheimer is such a legendary figure,
Yeah?
right? I mean, and Pete paints such a
He
fascinating
does.
picture of him in the book.
Yeah.
Brilliant, charismatic leader, but also really complicated personnel.
Temperamental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was Bohm's relationship with him like?
I think Bohm really admired him.
Yeah.
Almost saw him as a father figure.
Yeah.
And Oppenheimer's approval really meant a lot to Bohm.
Interesting.
And his influence on Bohm's early work is clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at Berkeley, Bohm is suddenly immersed in this cutting-edge research,
Oh, yeah.
working on protons and deuterons.
Yeah.
But this is also a time of great political tension.
With, the looming threat of war.
Yeah.
And we start to see how the personal and the political start to kind of intertwine.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, with Bohm's scientific journey.
Yeah, you can't really separate the two,
Right.
can you?
No, not at all.
And this is also the era of McCarthyism, the Red Scare.
Yeah.
Growing suspicion of anyone with leftist leanings.
Yeah.
And Pete actually mentions that Bohm joined the Communist Party.
Wow.
Briefly during his time at Berkeley.
So he was right in the thick of it.
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how that must have impacted his life, especially in academia.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
But before we get to that,
yeah.
let's talk about his scientific development.
Yeah.
Because there's this incredible anecdote in the book about one of Bohm's early seminars at Berkeley.
Okay.
Where he had this really intense, almost mystical experience.
Okay.
While presenting his work.
What do you mean by mystical?
Well, he talks about feeling deeply connected to everyone in the room.
Okay.
Almost like transcending individual consciousness.
Okay.
And he even saw this bright light.
Like a
very similar to
vision.
Yeah, to the light from those childhood dreams that we talked about.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like a
bringing it full circle.
Full circle. It's amazing.
Oh, wow.
But Pete also mentions that this experience was followed by a period of deep depression.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it seems like the intensity of that experience was just
overwhelming.
Yeah, overwhelming.
Yeah.
And Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
with his focus on, scientific productivity,
Right.
wasn't very sympathetic.
No, he didn't really have time for that.
Yeah, he didn't really have time for that.
Kind of touchy-feely stuff.
No.
Yeah.
So it seems like Bohm is dealing with a lot at this point.
Absolutely.
The pressure of working at the forefront of physics,
Right.
the political climate of the time,
The threat of war.
his own personal struggles.
Ugh.
Yeah. Did he ever manage to pull himself out of this depression?
He did, but his political affiliations would soon catch up with him in a big way.
Ah. Oh, this doesn't sound good.
Yeah, remember that brief stint with the Communist Party?
Oh, yeah?
Well, that would have lasting consequences.
What happened?
He was called to testify before the House Committee on Un-American Activities.
Oh, no.
Which was basically a witch hunt for communists in the U.S.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he was forced to choose between his principles and his career.
Exactly.
Wow.
And his decision would change the course of his life forever.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So he had to make this really difficult choice.
He did.
Yeah.
Betray his friends and colleagues or face the consequences.
What did he do?
He refused to name names.
Wow.
He stood by his principles.
Yeah.
Even though it meant losing his job at Princeton, being blacklisted from academia in the U.S., and ultimately being forced into exile.
Wow. That's a heavy price to pay for intellectual freedom.
It is.
Where did he go?
Brazil.
Brazil. Quite a change of scenery.
Yeah, huge.
From the Ivy League.
I know.
I can only imagine, the language barrier, the cultural differences.
Oh, yeah, and the constant fear of surveillance.
Yeah.
Also been incredibly isolating.
Yeah.
And Pete tells this funny story about Bohm trying to find an apartment and being directed to the red light district.
Oh, no.
Just because he was a bachelor.
Oh, that's so funny.
I know.
Oh, man.
It just highlights the cultural misunderstandings and the loneliness he must have been experiencing.
Oh, that's really sad.
Yeah.
But even in this state of exile, Bohm continued his scientific work, right?
He never stopped working.
This is where his causal interpretation of quantum mechanics comes into play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was really wrestling with the implications of quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
Particularly the idea that at the subatomic level, things happen randomly.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't satisfied with just leaving it to chance.
Yeah.
So he proposed this idea of hidden variables.
Hidden variables. Okay, can you explain that a bit further for our listeners?
Sure. Imagine you're flipping a coin, right?
Yeah.
We usually think of it as like a 50-50 chance, heads or tails.
Yeah.
But what if there were factors that we couldn't see?
Okay.
Hidden variables that actually determine the outcome.
I see.
That's essentially what Bohm was suggesting.
Okay.
That there's this deeper level of reality
Right.
influencing the seemingly random behavior of particles.
So he was trying to bring back a sense of order.
Exactly, to the
Yeah.
quantum world.
Yeah.
He wanted to reconcile quantum mechanics with the deterministic view of physics championed by Einstein.
Right. Einstein's famous quote,
Exactly.
God does not play dice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He believed in a universe where things happen for a reason,
Right.
not just by chance.
It sounds like Bohm was challenging some pretty fundamental assumptions in physics.
He was.
How was his theory received by the scientific community?
Not, oh, well,
Really?
no.
What happened?
Some physicists even dismissed it as like a physical fairy tale for children.
Oh, wow.
I know.
But he didn't give up.
No, he didn't.
He kept going.
He engaged in these intense debates with colleagues, even exchanging letters with Einstein himself.
Wow. What did Einstein think of his ideas?
Well, Einstein, while appreciating Bohm's attempt to reintroduce causality
Yeah.
into quantum mechanics, wasn't entirely convinced.
Really?
No.
Why not?
He wasn't a fan of the idea of a universe with different laws operating at different levels.
Okay.
He believed in a unified theory.
I see.
You know, one set of simple and elegant principles that could explain everything.
So even though Bohm's theory was groundbreaking, it didn't quite align with Einstein's vision
It did.
of the universe.
No, it was a bit too messy for him.
Yeah.
Too many moving parts.
So beyond the scientific debate, Bohm is still dealing with the personal fallout of his exile,
Oh, yeah.
right? He separated from loved ones back in the U.S.
Yeah, and navigating a complicated relationship with Miriam Yevik.
It seems like Bohm was really deeply affected by his personal experiences.
He was.
It's almost like his scientific pursuits were intertwined with this search for meaning
I think you're right.
and connection in his own life.
It's like his personal struggles fueled his intellectual quest.
Yeah.
Speaking of connection, this period also marks a significant turning point in Bohm's life.
Okay. What happened?
He met Cyril Wolfson,
Okay.
a physiotherapist from England who would become his wife.
Oh, so amidst all this turmoil, he finds love.
He does.
That's great.
It was a really important relationship for him.
Yeah.
Cyril brought much-needed stability to his life. They married in 1956 and eventually settled in Israel.
Israel.
Yeah.
Okay, that's another big move.
Yeah.
What prompted that decision?
There were a few factors. One was Cyril's Jewish heritage,
Okay.
but Bohm was also drawn to the intellectual vibrancy of Israel at the time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But even in this new environment, it seems like Bohm couldn't escape the political realities of the time.
You're referring to the 1956 Hungarian uprising.
Yeah, Pete mentions how deeply affected Bohm was by the Soviet Union's brutal crackdown
Oh, yeah.
on the uprising.
You really shook him.
It seems to have really shattered any remaining illusions he might have had
It did.
about Marxist ideology.
It was a wake-up call,
Yeah.
forcing him to confront the dark side of political ideologies he once sympathized with.
It's fascinating how these external events, these political upheavals, kept pushing Bohm
They
to
did.
reevaluate his beliefs.
Absolutely.
Not just about science, but also about the world around him.
Yeah, he was constantly questioning
Yeah.
and reevaluating.
Did this questioning lead him in any new directions intellectually?
It did.
Okay.
And this brings us to another significant influence in Bohm's life,
Okay.
the Indian philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti.
Krishnamurti.
Yeah.
Heard his name before.
Yeah,
Wasn't he known for his unconventional views on consciousness and self-awareness?
that's right. His teachings emphasize the importance of going beyond thought,
Okay.
of questioning the nature of the self and recognizing the illusory nature of separateness.
These ideas must have really resonated with Bohm,
They did.
who was already grappling with his own experiences of interconnectedness
Exactly.
during that intense seminar back at Berkeley.
It all kind of came together for him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he found a kindred spirit in Krishnamurti,
he did.
someone who was also exploring the deeper dimensions of reality.
Right. But from a more philosophical perspective?
Yeah, rather than a purely scientific one.
Exactly.
Their first meeting in 1959 sparked a long and intellectually stimulating relationship.
It did.
They engaged in these deep dialogues,
Oh, yeah, for years.
exploring the nature of thought,
Consciousness.
consciousness.
Possibility of transcending the limitations of the individual ego.
It sounds like it was a real meeting of minds.
It was.
Two brilliant individuals pushing each other to think beyond conventional boundaries. But I'm also sensing some potential for conflict here.
Oh, yeah.
Bohm, the scientist, deeply entrenched in the world of reason and logic,
Right.
encountering Krishnamurti, who advocated for going beyond thought.
Yeah.
Did this create any tension in their relationship?
There was definitely some tension.
Yeah.
Krishnamurti's emphasis on going beyond thought really clashed with Bohm's belief in the power of ordered rational thought.
Right.
Bohm couldn't just abandon the scientific framework that had shaped his entire career.
So he was trying to find a way to bridge these two worlds,
He was.
the scientific and the philosophical.
Exactly.
And this quest for a unified understanding would eventually lead him to develop one of his most groundbreaking concepts.
The implicate order.
The implicate order. That sounds intriguing.
It is.
I'm eager to learn more about that.
Right.
But before we delve into the complexities of the implicate order, let's take a pause here and continue this fascinating journey in part 3 of our deep dive. So we left off with Bohm, wrestling with these really profound questions about the nature of reality, influenced by both his scientific background
Right.
and his philosophical dialogues with Krishnamurti.
Right.
This is where the implicate order comes in, right?
Yeah. This is where it all starts to come together.
Okay.
It's like he was trying to create a grand unified theory, but not just for physics, for reality itself.
Wow.
Bridging the gap between the material world and the realm of consciousness.
I'm picturing Bohm with his, wild hair and intense gaze,
Yeah.
trying to merge the concrete world of atoms and particles
Right.
with this more ephemeral world of, thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Ambitious, to say the least.
Ambitious is an understatement.
Yeah.
But that was Bohm, always pushing the boundaries, challenging conventional thinking.
So the implicate order, in a nutshell,
Okay.
suggests that reality is much more complex and interconnected
Right.
than we perceive it to be.
Then we can even imagine.
Okay, but that's pretty vague.
Sure.
Can you explain this implicate order in a way that would make sense to someone who
Okay.
isn't a theoretical physicist?
Okay. Think of a hologram.
Okay.
You know how a hologram can contain a 3-dimensional image within a 2-dimensional surface?
Yeah, I remember those from like science museums. That are
Exactly.
trippy.
Right.
So the implicate order is like the whole hologram.
Right.
This deeper, more fundamental level of reality
Yeah.
containing all the information and potential of the universe.
And what we experience as our everyday reality with its separate objects and events
Right.
is just a projection,
Okay.
an explicate order of that deeper reality.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying everything is interconnected
It is.
and folded within this implicate order.
Right.
And what we see is just a small sliver
Tiny sliver.
of that interconnectedness.
Exactly.
It's like the universe is this vast flowing ocean of potentiality.
Yeah.
And our individual experiences are like waves emerging from that ocean.
That's a great analogy.
This idea of a flowing, interconnected reality
Uh-huh.
resonates with a lot of spiritual traditions, doesn't it? It's like the ancient concept of a cosmic web or a universal consciousness.
Exactly. And that's what makes Bohm's work so fascinating.
Yeah.
He was able to bridge the gap between scientific and philosophical ideas
Yeah.
in a way that few others have been able to do.
So how did Bohm go about exploring this implicate order?
Well,
Was it purely theoretical?
he was always trying to ground his ideas in science.
Okay.
He even collaborated with another physicist, Basil Heinle,
Okay.
at Birkbeck College in London.
Birkbeck College wasn't that known for being a bit more open
It was,
to unconventional ideas
yes, very much so.
than other academic institutions.
It was a unique place, very focused on adult education and interdisciplinary thinking.
Oh, interesting.
It was the perfect environment for Bohm to continue pushing the boundaries
Yeah.
of scientific inquiry.
So he found a place where he could really explore these radical ideas
He did.
without fear of censorship or ridicule.
Exactly.
Did he manage to gain any traction with his theories within the scientific community?
Well, his work gained a devoted following,
Mm-hmm.
but it remained outside the mainstream of physics.
Yeah.
His ideas were simply too radical.
Too out there.
Yeah, too far out
For many of his contemporaries.
at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Bohm wasn't one to back down from a challenge, was he?
No, he wasn't.
Pete tells this great story about Bohm's collaboration with an American physicist named Donald Schumacher.
Oh, yeah.
They're working on this concept called the Rhea mode,
Uh-huh.
which focused on the flowing nature of reality.
Right. Very much in line with the implicate order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a fascinating collaboration.
It was.
But unfortunately, it eventually broke down.
It did.
It seems Bohm could be quite difficult to work with.
It could be.
Brilliant and generous with his ideas,
Right.
but also prone to withdrawing
Yeah.
when things got too personal or emotionally charged.
He really struggled with that side of things.
It's like he poured all his energy into his intellectual pursuits,
Mm-hmm.
but struggled to connect with people on a deeper level.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And this tension between his intellectual brilliance and his interpersonal challenges
Right.
seems to have followed him throughout his life.
That's a common theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Despite these challenges, Bohm never stopped exploring new avenues of thought.
He didn't.
In his later years, he became increasingly interested in dialogue
Yes.
as a means of transforming communication and understanding.
This was a direct outgrowth of his work with Krishnamurti.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he saw dialogue as a way to kind of break down the barriers between people
Exactly.
and to create a shared space
Mm-hmm.
for genuine understanding and insight.
Right. Not just talking at each other,
Yeah.
but really listening
Yeah.
and
In
engaging.
a way that allows for new perspectives to emerge.
Exactly.
He believed that true dialogue could lead to a collective transformation of consciousness,
He did.
a shift from, fragmentation and conflict
Right.
to wholeness and harmony.
It's like he was trying to apply the principles of the implicate order to human communication itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seeing that interconnectedness, not just in the physical world,
Uh-huh.
but also in our relationships with each other.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
He even organized dialogue groups,
Really?
bringing together people from all walks of life
Wow.
to explore these ideas.
Makes you wonder, what if we could all learn to communicate in this way?
Yeah.
Could we bridge the divides that separate us
Yeah.
and create a more peaceful
An interconnected world.
and interconnected world?
It's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
Sadly, Bohm didn't live to see his vision of a dialogue-based society fully realized.
Yeah.
He passed away in 1992,
Okay.
but his legacy continues to inspire those seeking a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe we inhabit.
Well, this deep dive has certainly given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
David Bohm was clearly a complex and fascinating individual.
He was.
A man driven by a relentless curiosity and a deep desire to unravel the mysteries of existence.
He was a true pioneer challenging the boundaries of science and thought.
Yeah.
His work continues to be relevant today as we grapple with questions about the nature of consciousness,
Yeah.
the interconnectedness of all things, and the search for meaning in a complex world.
If you're intrigued by Bohm's story and his ideas, I highly recommend checking out Infinite Potential by F. David Peat.
It's a great read.
It's a captivating journey into the mind of a truly remarkable thinker.
He was one of a kind.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.